Okay, good afternoon. Like to call Park and Recreation to order, please.
How you been?
If I could please have approval of our last meeting, meetings, which would have been on, don't have them before us, so we'll waive that. But what we do have before us is one piece that has been in rules for about a little over a year. It's the piece, the Neighborhood Advisory Association legislation that was first introduced on June 16, 2017. And it's an ordinance amending and supplementing Title III, Chapter 31 of the Akron Code of Ordinances to enact Article 3 Neighborhood Advisory Associations. And it reads, whereas community involvement leads to strong neighborhoods, and whereas strong neighborhoods lead to a strong Akron, and whereas members of councils benefit from the informed advice of residents they represent, now therefore be enacted by council this change in our code to establish neighborhood advisory associations. When this was introduced over a year ago, the law department had one concern, and that was that per our charter, the mayor is the only one who can appoint someone to boards and committees. As this legislation is drafted, leadership is organic and comes from the neighborhood up, which means to have equitable distribution of representation through our wards, where there are block clubs, be it neighborhood associations already established, where there are high schools as per the legislation. The student council president would have a seat on this. Of course, the school board liaison for that ward would have a seat on this, as would the COPS officer. So what we want to do, what I wanted to offer to council was to bring this back in. I've spoken to our, because this was under rules, I've spoken to our rules chairperson, Councilwoman Keith, so that council could have a discussion in regards to this piece of legislation, because what's taking place right now is community organizations are looking at this legislation, and they're going to be asked to give their input to see how we can draft a piece that properly addresses the needs and everyone's concerns. So what I wanted council to be able to look at, since this is sat for a year, and when it was introduced, I asked members of council if there were any questions to please, forward them to me. And if you had any organizations within your community that were already organized and active, to please forward them to me so that they could give their input. It's been a year. I think it's time for us to move on it, as we've learned just a couple weeks ago when Ms. Kager came. They established a leadership group. Middlebury is organizing, West Hill. You have the Wright Group in Goodyear. You have different communities that are already organized, but when we go to those directly, none of them truly represent the full ward. So this is to give a structure for citizen engagement to be able to have input, as, like I said, was stated about 3 weeks ago when Ms. Kager down here, to have input in their government. So the piece that I want council to be able to look at today and just address if there's any questions and give comments on this is the piece that the legal opinion that came from the law department. And I think everyone has it. If not, I'll just read it. This is coming from...
Councilman, we don't have it.
Okay.
I don't have it.
This is the legal opinion that the advisory group has. Would you like a copy?
Yes.
Okay. I'll read it. It says, as discussed during drafting of the proposed Neighborhood Advisory Associations legislation, It conflicts with the charter of the City of Akron, Section 54. The charter invests the mayor with the power to appoint. The mayor, by and with consent of council, shall appoint and remove all members of boards, commissions, except as otherwise provided in this charter. Inherent in the authority to appoint is the discretion to choose who to appoint. Proposed Section 3144E in the Neighborhood Advisory Association's legislation attempts to remove this discretion from the mayor by forcing the mayor to appoint pre-selected individuals, including those chosen by individual members of council. Because council has only the authority to give or withhold consent regarding the mayor's appointments, proposed Section 3144E conflicts with the charter, especially to the extent it purports to permit an individual member of council to dictate who the mayor must appoint. The one point I want to point out is that nowhere in this legislation does a council member appoint anyone. Again, this is organic. It comes from the community up, meaning as it's laid out, where we have established block clubs who work with our COPS officers, they pick their block club presidents. Students in the high schools pick their student council president. Of course, the school board liaison is an elected official. The COPS officer for that area is determined by the police department. So nowhere in here does the council person pick anyone. But it's here for us to discuss, and I thought since looking at late mid-August or early September, by that time all of the community groups will have had a chance to compile their information. We'll start pulling them together. We wanted council to be able to form its opinion before that time. So if there are any questions, again, this has been before us for about a year. And before the community starts to get its input, I want to make sure we were all reassociated with it, no matter how your feeling is, if you're for it or against it. So I'll open it up to committee if there's any questions or concerns. Just to, again, to let you know that I believe we're looking at mid-August to start meeting with the different community groups, because I know it's before some of them right now. They're meeting and vetting it out as it is. So any questions from members of committee or members of council?
I just have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we know the origin of this?
Yes.
Is there a reason it is this way versus council members having an opportunity to appoint?
You mean the origin as far as the way the charter is?
Yeah, this is strictly by charter only.
By charter.
And was it ever different than this, or it was changed? Because I know that there are times when we changed the charter.
You know, I'm not an expert on our charter. I know council has the ability to form committees, but I think just establishing our charter, this is the way it was originally structured. I think just like we found out when we looked at the, I'll use the bees and the chickens and whatnot, how that was our original ordinance. Some things are dated, and they have, you know, it's time to change them. So this creates the opportunity for us to discuss that.
Mr. Clerk, do you know if there's a change of a date on the charter in that section? Because it would indicate whether there was a charter change. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Well, again, just wanted to bring it before you. I ask again if there are any questions, if there are any concerns, or if you want to make sure that your community has an opportunity to have input on critiquing the present legislation as it stands, please forward that information to me. I've mentioned some of the groups that have been given the communities. I know the Kenmore community has it. I believe the Goodyear community has it. I know Middlebury community is looking at it right now. There's a couple others that escaped me. Ms. Kager, who came down, gave her a copy of it. So, again, if you want to make sure that your community has a say in it, please forward that to me. But that's all I had for us. If there aren't any more questions, Mr. Kamer? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through this, on the second page, if people want to flip to it, under C, it says each neighborhood advisory association shall also include, and you can read on, but number one, it says a representative from the student council of a high school located within the council ward. I mean, I don't have a high school, and I won't have a high school until 2022. So I mean, please explain that part.
Okay. Well, yeah, I just shared, and we know not every ward has a high school, but like Ward 3 and Ward 4 share predominantly Bookville High School.
Okay.
Ward 3 was split with Kenmore as well. And as I was just sharing with the young people who are here to visit us today, asking them to give their input on it, the way that will work is the high school and this is when it goes back to, remember we had the conversation with the school department, a school system, making sure that the clusters have some synergy with the wards. Because what would happen if Bookville cluster, and I'm going to use myself and Council President Somerville as an example, where Bookville overlaps with Ward 3, well, a representative from that high school would sit on her board. If it was shared between two high schools, I don't know, we'd have to figure that out. But if the dominant high school is Bookville, then maybe not the council president, maybe the student council vice president would serve on hers, or however that would be worked out. But I understand your concern, and it's well noted.
And then while I got you, might as well ask another question. Back to the first page under 31.44, under A, number 2, registered to vote in the ward. I mean, I would love for all my residents to be registered voters, but I do have some. They just don't want to register to vote. So what's your take on that one?
Again, this is the first draft that came based on some information I gave to the law department, and they came back. This is my thing. If someone is, I know we talk about voting all the time, but there are some people who conscientiously, because of their political beliefs and sometimes because of their religious beliefs, don't register to vote. But if they're engaged in the community and they've been selected as a leader by their block club, I mean, who are we, it's my opinion, who are we to not, acknowledge their leadership?
Well, and I'm going to apologize up front, but what about if we have a community leader that obviously used to vote, but somehow the law doesn't allow them to vote anymore, but they can really be influential in one of these boards, so that would be something that would be a problem.
No, I agree with you, sir. And that's what we were discussing, possibly that piece be amended in some kind of way or taken out.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll get input from members of the community and from members of council where we can address that point.
Okay.
But thank you. Points
No, that's
well
all I
noted.
have for now. Thanks.
Points well noted. Thank you very much. So if there isn't any more to come from members of council, from the committee or members of council, again, this is all we have. We can consider ourselves to adjourn it at this time, because I don't believe that there's anything else on the agenda. So if I could get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay. Thank you.